What is up, everybody? Today we're going to be taking a look at what is more than likely on everybody's mind, and that is the state of the economy. And if you haven't done so already, make sure to hit that like, subscribe, and notification bell to not miss any more insightful content that we release. Now let's get into it. Now we all know that the Canadian economy is facing some challenges, and looking at the data that we received when it came to the inflation report, which was quite positive, the Bank of Canada and the government of Canada have a lot of work cut out for them. And so what we really are looking at is trying to assess what we think could possibly happen to the economy. And really, there are only two ways it can actually go. It's not going to obviously remain the same. It's either going to get really bad or we're going to have a soft landing, which could be a really bad recession or a mild recession. We're going to take a look and see both scenarios and figure out where we potentially will land. Statistics Canada had released its latest GDP numbers for Canada, and it showed that the economy had shrunk 1.06%. When that statistic was actually released, it signaled that we were actually in a recession. However, in Q2, it was revised higher at 1.4%. So as a result, we did not hit a technical recession, and we are still watching to see what will happen. Now, even though we haven't necessarily hit a technical recession, I think that what's actually happening is we are still going to go into a recession. If we're not already in a recession, the majority of the economy is struggling. We are waiting now for the Bank of Canada to potentially make adjustments to their rates based on what potentially happens to the jobs report. So the current situation is not excellent, and it is trending towards a full-blown recession. So now let's examine exactly what will happen in a bad recession. So the first portion of it is going to be that inflation becomes a real concern. And as a result, we're going to have higher interest rates. It's going to trickle down into homeowners and their mortgages and their payments, and they're not going to be able to afford it. And then as a result, with those higher rates, you're going to have businesses which are going to struggle, and then resulting in higher unemployment, where we're going to have people being laid off. And then you're going to have a far bigger problem where then house prices are just going to be crashing simply because there is no activity in the housing market. People are forced to sell their homes because they can't keep the roof over their heads. So essentially, if we get into a bad recession, it's going to basically decimate the Canadian economy and Canadians in general. And it could be quite frightening to see what would happen there. So I think that we're not really trending towards that direction, but that is something that we still need to pay attention to. So currently our unemployment rate is sitting at about 5.8%. We've actually upticked just slightly from 5.7%. And we know that the Bank of Canada is actually waiting for these markers to increase, kind of taking the side of caution to say that, okay, we actually could act today in adjusting the interest rates, but we need some other factors to secure our position. If we don't wait for those unemployment rates to increase further, then it could just spark some more activity and then hence cause a bigger problem. So I think what the Bank of Canada is really looking at is making sure that unemployment is at a number where if they do make those rate adjustments, that they have a buffer in place to provide some QE for the economy. And then the saving grace of this whole thing could be that if the Bank of Canada decides to reduce rates as unemployment rates are going up, the housing segment is actually going to be saved. And what I mean by that is that many people who have mortgages and have not renewed yet, the amounts are going to just floor them. And the renewal amounts are actually going to be 40, 50, 60% higher than what they're currently paying for. And as a result, if we looked at the current situation, they wouldn't be able to afford it, and as a result would have to basically let go of their homes. Home ownership in Canada is ingrained in our minds as one of the most important things to have in our lives. Now, many people have different opinions about it, but within the Canadian culture, home ownership is one of the biggest things. We don't look towards renting, as renting is more of a short-term thing, while we're putting enough money together in our savings to have enough for a down payment. So basically, the reduction in these interest rates are really going to soften the blow for those people who are anticipating their renewals and are worried that they won't be able to afford their current rates. And if you've actually been paying attention to what's happening with the rates, you will actually notice that they actually have play of about almost 100 basis points from the peaks of where the financial institutions were lending funds at. The 5-year terms have come down. People are now actually even considering variable rate mortgages. Simply because there are some rate cuts on the horizon. We don't know when. Some people are saying Q2. Some people are even saying maybe it could even be in Q3. And there are some people, outliers, basically saying that it could happen in Q1 based on what's happening with the economy. Now let's just examine what could actually happen in a mild recession, or what many people are really calling it is a soft landing. So the first thing is job losses are not as severe. We also know that Statistics Canada is not taking into consideration the amount of immigrants and how they're not being inputted into the employment rates correctly. And as a result, they're not actually getting the right numbers to determine where the unemployment rate stands. Now, if we have a little bit of contraction, but not as severe as what people are thinking, and then the Bank of Canada makes their reductions, then this will actually help the overall market. The Bank of Canada won't need to make abrupt changes to the interest rate, but gradually bring them down, which I feel that's going to happen anyways. It's not going to be like overnight, the day that they announce that they're going to reduce rates, you're going to have them go down 2.5% from 5% currently. That's just not going to happen. It's going to be a quarter point. It's going to be maybe a half a point to start. Many people allude to the rise of interest rates to the elevator going up. However, when rates are coming down, they allude to it as going down the stairs. So it's a very gradual process, and they're watching to see what is happening while they make these changes. Just because interest rates were adjusted several times in 2022 and in 2023, they are actually making those adjustments because the Bank of Canada is actually looking to see what is going to happen 18 months down the road. And as a result, even if rates are coming down aggressively, they are predicting what is happening 18 months down the road. So don't expect a rapid rate reduction. But if the rates come down sooner, then it's going to help with a softer landing. And I think it really all stems from what is going to happen with the employment report. Having this QE in place with slower job losses will probably result in a reduction in home inventory and not having the housing market basically collapse. There is some absorption rate, and so there's not going to be this glut of inventory where nothing happens and the days on market just go through the roof. So I'm not an economist. I basically just take a look at the data. I try to interpret this data to see what makes sense. I have learned a lot. I never really used to pay so much attention to the economics of it, as we've all been affected by many facets of the economy, now more so than ever before. We have learned a lot, and I don't think you should discount this. And everyone is taking this information, trying to take this data and implement it into their own lives. So predicting things is not necessarily what we want to do. It's not an easy task. But by taking certain facets of it and seeing what is happening, you'll kind of get an idea of where things are headed. So in my personal opinion, I think we're actually headed into a mild recession. I think that we will be seeing the biggest fear that still sits within the Bank of Canada and probably the federal government also is that all the renewals that are going to be taking place in 2024 and 2025. And I think that we are a little bit ahead, because what those rates would have been if the people that needed to renew in 2024 or 2025 were stuck in what rates people have faced in the last 6 months, they would be in the biggest shit of their lives. So I think we're kind of lucky that still it's lower. It's still going to hurt, but it's not going to hurt as much. Now, be sure to leave a comment below on how you think the economy, or what direction our economy is headed into. Do you feel it's going to be a bad recession? Do you think it's going to be a mild recession? And make sure to hit the thumbs up, as it does help those algorithms and help encourage me to provide videos like this. Until next time, stay informed, stay curious, and stay tuned.